It's 5:15. We'll call this regular meeting to order. I'd like to recognize everybody in the audience this evening. Would you please stand and recite the pledge with me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moving on the agenda, school board norms. Cedric, would you like to read those? Green.
School board norms. The decisions will be based on the school board's strategic plan, its mission, and what's best for the students. School board will act as stewards of tax dollars. Board members will complete foundation work and prepare before meetings. Meetings will be efficient. All perspectives will be voiced and heard, and all board members will maintain a professional decorum.
Thank you, Cedric. Moving on to C, we have no public communications tonight. Any conflicts of interest to declare? Hearing none, moving into the consent agenda is motion to approve. Motion by Brenda. Seconded by Jennifer. Any discussion? Hearing none, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving into our regular agenda, we have nothing under recognition or correspondence. Moving into reports, student council report, no one's here.
We did have Bailey Hadlwick is the student council representative. He was unable to be here. We were informed that he had a proxy to come, but maybe they'll come in a little bit, but
Okay.
He was aware.
Okay. Moving to number 2, superintendent's report. Rob?
So I have a few items there. We had our in-service days, of course, as I read in my report, we spanned over 5 days. 2 of those days with our new staff, in which they get kind of the drinking from the water hose, the fire hose kind of, we do the best we can and get them ready to go, but they get an overview of the district, special ed training, mental health, technology training, Marzano. We do all of the benefit paperwork and all of that type of thing, and we give them opportunities to work with mentors. But the next week, we have 3 days with full staff. That ranges from individual building meetings to the Tuesday, which thank you to the board for coming and serving breakfast. I know the staff always appreciates having you there, along with the administrators to provide that. I shared with you the presentation that I do to the full staff. And I know Steve stayed for some at least. I don't know if others were able to stay also. And if you weren't, you want to check out, I did link that presentation. It's in a sway, and you can see that what we provided. I focused on the importance of relationships, which is a great segue into what Luke Anderson and Shane Ringdahl will be talking about with relationship mapping here in a little bit. I also shared the breakdown of Marzano. We're in year 3 of that implementation now, our final phase. We talked about the Citizens Advisory Group, the priorities for our facilities planning, and then we also had an opportunity to talk with or have some discussions in presentation on the near-site clinic. The breakout sessions, which we implemented a few years ago, where we bring in either specialists or we work with our own specialists who are our teachers and other staff members to provide training to others. And so you can see that breakdown of the different breakout sessions we provide. But they're about 45 minutes in length. And again, we try to leverage the staff that we have that can bring expertise to others, and then we bring in other entities as well. They range from retirement planning to instructional strategies, across the gamut. I list a bunch of them here, and then you can see the breakout sessions themselves. Near-site clinic update. Dr. Ashat was present at our in-service. He talked briefly to the full group, but then he also had 3 different breakout sessions, and they were the most heavily attended breakout sessions that we had, not surprisingly, but there was standing room only in our near-site clinic breakouts. And he did a great job, helped to explain the what, the why, the how, and they'll be starting on January 1st. That's the tentative plan for the near-site clinic. We will be located between Quiznos and UPS right on First, so a nice location for that also. And he does have a very interesting model of how he provides this. The business model is very interesting, and I think it's going to be a great, I think there's a lot of excitement from the staff in terms of what this can be. Of course, it always comes down to service, and you know, you need to get what you need to get out of the clinic. But I think if people are excited about wanting to try and give it a shot, so we're excited about that too. You know, some of the feedback we got, 7 days a week, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Is, you know, tentatively where they're at. And Dr. Rashad did give a handout that I've linked also, if you have a chance to check that out. But again, something that as a staff, really excited about. I've provided also an employee benefits guide that Hayes puts together for us. I think it's just a good piece of information for the board to have. It's good information for the staff to have. Full breakdown of all the benefits that we do offer in the district. Budget hearing information, I've just provided. I think as a board, we're well versed in what that budget hearing is. We also know that this will be the last of the hearing in this format that we have to conduct. There was legislation that changed it starting next year, so we will be mandated to have a budget hearing, which we have anyway, but we don't have to do the confusing zero mil calculation anymore, which ends up being confusing to taxpayers. And so we're happy that it's going to change to that universal hearing notice. So it'll be individualized to every taxpayer. They get a statement that says, this is what the county's doing, this is the percentage of increase, this is the total impact of your home, here's the city, here's the school district, and then here's where all of their budget hearings are. Right now, we aren't mandated to have a budget hearing, like I said, even though we choose to have one anyway. Even the year that we didn't have to by the zero mil calculation, we chose to anyway because it's just good practice. But we'll be mandated to have them. They'll all be listed in one spot. So, you know, as a taxpayer, you get a notice once instead of multiple letters, and it tells you where all the hearings are and who is doing what, individualized to your property. So all in all, we were pretty happy with as a legislative focus group, we were a part of making that recommendation. So we're very happy that it came. And I think it's going to be a much more user-friendly process for taxpayers, and certainly transparent and easy to understand. I think the zero mil calculation was certainly transparent, but it wasn't easy to understand. People would misrepresent what that calculation meant, and so it was confusing. Board education, at the last meeting, we talked about a handful of different areas that we're going to bring in the future, and I've listed them here. We've set all of those so far except for Two Rivers Activity Center, and I'm talking with ESG this week. So we'll schedule them for future meetings. So looking forward to those. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions for Rob? None? Okay. Moving on to board education, we have the relationship mapping. Luke and Shane, would you like to come forward and tell us what's going on?
All right. Good evening. I'll bring up, we have some images here. So essentially what we did, with me being new to the building, I have Shane Ringdahl, school counselor, here with me. One of the big things for us was finding out where we're at with relationships with our students. The relationship mapping exercise started, as you'll see in that picture right there. We essentially printed off the names of every student in our building. So there was roughly 245 names on the wall. And our third day of in-service, we took some time. I introduced relationship mapping and talked about, but essentially what we wanted to do is we wanted to find out what kind of connections we had with our students in the building. Brought all of our staff in to find out what that looked like school-wide for us. So essentially, all of those names were on the board, all the staff were there, and it came down, we had basically Post-it notes. So a yellow Post-it note, meaning we have a positive relationship or a positive connection with that student. So each teacher in the building would put a yellow Post-it note on a name that they had a positive connection with. And we actually, probably backing up a little bit, we even further to the point of you had a good enough relationship with that student that if they had a problem, they would be comfortable coming and talking to you. They would seek you out if there was something wrong. So that, I think, changed it a little bit, going to that degree rather than just saying, do you have a positive relationship? It's pretty easy to feel that you have a positive relationship. I think that forced us to look a little deeper into how positive that relationship is and what that connection was. And then any other color, and you'll notice in the pictures as we go here, any other color, let's see, this one. There we go. You can see some of the colored Post-its up there. Oops. Any color was an at-risk concern. It was a teacher had a concern about, and at-risk does not just simply mean behavior. It could be out of school circumstances. It could be that they're very, very quiet. It isn't just for those students that we would view as a discipline issue or a possible behavior issue. It was for any student that we just, maybe it was that student that you didn't hear a lot from and they're in the back of the room and you don't really know they're there sometimes because they're so quiet and they're doing their job. So it was a really good exercise for all of our staff. It was really good for me being new to the building and seeing a lot of names I didn't really know. There were some names that I knew from talking to staff and different things, but it was a really unique opportunity. A couple of the eye openers I looked at, there was a student up there that had 2 yellows, meaning there were 2 positive relationships. The staff felt there was 2 positive relationships that the student could come and talk to them, but then there was 14 at-risk tags. Well, obviously, it took a little self-reflection on our part. I think the words that we used at that time, I said, I'm not sure I'd like being here all that much either. There's probably some issues that we need to address here, and we need to make sure we're establishing a better connection with that student. At the same time, we had a student up there that didn't have any. So I didn't know the student, and I said, well, let me guess. This student probably gets very good grades, doesn't ever cause any problems. They rarely will raise their hand because they're kind of shy, an introvert, but excels in everything. And that's kind of the case here. So again, still at risk because we don't know enough about the student and we need to make sure we make a better connection. So some of the things we talked about is we're implementing, we call it the Wildcat Way, just making sure we greet students as they enter the building. It was really important for us to have all the kindergarten students as well as everybody else, which very few of us obviously knew any kindergarten students because they're brand new to the building. But at the same time, very important for all of us, whether it be 5th grade, doesn't matter what grade it is, to get down, meet those students, and start establishing a connection, because a simple hello, hey, welcome to Gusner, can be a very powerful tool for a young kid if it's not in a confrontational way. Any positive interaction is really powerful. It'll make that interaction that much easier as they get older. So it was really a focus of ours, and I think it was really interesting for a lot of the staff that had been there to see those and just go, wow. I mean, it was definitely an aha moment for a lot of people in the building. And Mr. Ringdahl will talk a little bit about where we go from here and how we can change some of those things. But a big part of what we're doing is really just pushing as far as, greeting students every morning as they walk into the classroom. We have all the names down. So our teachers are able to go and take a look at this and go, okay, who do I really need to hit early? They can revert back to those names so we know who those target areas are. Not that it's for all the kids. Obviously, we greet them all the same way, but there are some that, need another hit or 2 or 3 or 4 to make sure we establish that really positive connection. So the pictures that we have, Mrs. Hertz is compiling all the data on that, and then the teachers will have access to that so they understand where they need to go from there. Mr. Ringdahl brought up an interesting point. I'll hand it off to him here a little bit on, where we go from here.
So this is my 3rd year at Gusner, and I've gotten to know a lot of these students over the last couple of years. But this activity I thought was very meaningful. It was a wonderful visual to go through that activity and then take a step back and just see where we're at. I heard from several teachers that they were surprised I heard from many people they weren't surprised at all. It just so happens that in talking about interventions, many of the kiddos who ended up with a number of colored sticky notes are students that I work with. So that was helpful to see. But then there are students, of course, who had or might be at risk who I don't necessarily work with, so we can be more intentional in targeting some of those kiddos. But Mr. Anderson and I talked a little bit about, so this is just the perception from the teachers, where we think we're at. But then we talked about how interesting it would be to get data from the students to see what they think regarding their connections with adults in the buildings, who, or not necessarily who, but how many adults would they feel comfortable approaching if they needed something. So I thought that would give us a really well-rounded, balanced picture of where things are at Gustner in terms of the positive relationships we have. I don't know either if all the paras were able to do this. And I just thought of that, and I thought, God, we should include paras too, because they work with these kiddos, of course, in so many meaningful ways and see them many times more than the classroom teachers do. So I thought that would be interesting to get their perception as well. I visited with a few teachers after school had started, and based on what they saw up here, there were some who had nothing, some students who had no positive sticky notes, like Mr. Anderson said. So teachers have been intentional in seeking out some of these kiddos and making connections. And I heard from one teacher, she happened to greet a student and she had no experience with him, and he looked at her. "Why are you talking to me?" It was the response, but but he noticed. When thinking about interventions and where we go from here, I also was thinking about the Nurtured Heart approach that we're implementing and how that builds inner wealth in kiddos and really establishes meaningful connections between adults and kids and between kids. And my experience seeing Nurtured Heart techniques implemented definitely does encourage building those positive relationships. I see many adults in the hallway recognizing kiddos who are not necessarily in their class, but they're making connections with them. And there was a discussion too after doing this activity about how it's important for teachers to not forget about the kids they've had in their classrooms in the past and continue to maintain those positive relationships. Even if you had them in second grade, that doesn't mean you still can't maintain that positive relationship in fifth grade, for example.
And along those lines, we had one of our meetings where we got together was after our back to school night, and that Tuesday night. And it was really, when we talk about those connections, whether you taught them in first grade and then all of a sudden, you don't see them again. We talked about the fact that at that back to school night, you can really see those positive relationships on those nights because they seek out those teachers they've had, and teachers are seeking out those kids. And it really is it's a pretty powerful thing. That's when you know you really had an impact. So for this, seeing those numbers, it does show us as a staff that there is a bigger impact that can be had as well. It's not just what we've done, it's about what we need to do and how we can grow from here. So a big part of that for us now is we'll revisit this in a couple months. We did have some paras there. We didn't have everybody there because it was during those first 3 days. But in 2 months' time, we'll revisit this, and we're going to put those same names back up on the wall, and we're going to revisit this just as we did the first time around. And we're going to try and get a look at how we've improved, and then if we're not seeing that market improvement, we have to find further interventions to make sure that we are making those gains. And those sheets are filling up. Hopefully those at risk might not move, but if we can establish 5 more positive connections to that 2 and 14, that's a big jump. We're more than doubling what we already had. So that's a big jump for us. That's a big part of what we want to do now is figure out what we're doing is working, and what is not working, and what can we do better. I would like to commend Mr. Ringdahl. He's done a really good job in the hallways, whether it be introducing new students or students that have come past and say, really recognize them, using that nurtured heart language. I think it's been really good in the building this first 2 weeks of school. So just taking part in this exercise, I can see gains from it immediately, just in the way that kids are being approached and the way the hallways look right now. And I can't speak to what it was before, but I can speak to what I'm seeing now, and I really like what I see now, just due to doing this exercise. It was really good. It was one of those things that's a little bit kind of a hit as a teacher maybe, or as an educator. You think, man, there's a couple more I should have been looking for, but at the same time, if we can build on that, then it's done its job, and we can build off of that. So that's really what we're looking to do off of this, is just continue to grow as a building. You guys have any questions?
for him? Jennifer?
No questions, just a comment. Thank you so much for coming. When Mr. Leck talked about it a couple weeks ago, it was really intriguing and knew we needed to have some more information. It sounds like we're on a really great path to making sure that all of our children have support, and making sure that school is a safe place and that they have somebody that they can go to. So thank you. Keep up the good work. I'd be interested to even get a small snippet of how it went in 2 months.
Yeah, I think that when Mr. Ringdahl mentioned getting kids' perception on this, I think that may shock you in 2 ways. One way, they may have a lot more positive connections we think they do. They may have not given us that outward sign that they feel comfortable with us, so maybe we don't feel we have that positive connection where they may feel they do. And there may be some that we feel like we have a pretty positive connection and they don't feel like they have the same. So it'll be really interesting to see that relationship, when we get the kids' version of the students' version of that. So.
As far as the kids' version, has that been tallied already, or that's?
We have not done that yet. We actually
Okay.
sat down today and discussed it and
Okay.
talked about it between his counseling visits and whether we do some type of a survey. We're going to try and figure out a way. And again, it's not to put the names to it to find out who they do and don't. It's more about finding out how do they feel about those relationships and what do they have. And then we'll adjust from there and move forward with that. But it's the tricky part will be getting that information, but you'd be surprised at how much they'll give. I think just in those counseling sessions, I think in their guidance sessions, I think we'll have a really good picture of where they're at and where we're at in their eyes, not just how we feel.
Yep. So I think it brings it full circle on around, so.
Absolutely.
Any other questions or comments? Yep, Bob?
Also want to thank both of you for coming and sharing. I think it's valuable for the board to hear some of the things that we're doing as a district, and just as a reminder, this is something that we've done or are doing in every building. So 2,100 plus students are having this same exercise and giving our teachers and our counselors and administrators a really good snapshot of that really important relationship piece. So it's something I think is pretty exciting.
Okay, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Is there any old business? Hearing none, we'll move into new business. We have nothing under activity, buildings or grounds, or curriculum. Moving into finance. Is there a motion to approve the hockey rental agreement with Jamestown Park and Rec in the amount of $28,250 for the 2017-18 school year? Motion by Bob, seconded by Heidi. Any discussion? Nope. Bob first, then Heidi.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, go.
Probably the same question. How does is it the same as last year?
$250 more each year it goes up.
Same question, Heidi? No,
This
okay.
is a one-year contract?
The lease does go through through the park and rec through 2027. So there is 10 additional years that have already been supported through UJ and the Parks and Rec. So this is just that continuation of that 250 But I know there's been discussion about that. Well, what happens? There's been some transition happening with the University of Jamestown and concern about that, but that is locked in for another 10 years.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, assuming roll call vote, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We have nothing under personnel. Moving into policy and procedures, is there a motion to approve all of the second readings, A through H, on the policy? Motion by Jennifer, seconded by Cedric. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving to tuition, is there a motion to approve the tuition agreement for a second grade Litchfield Marion student to attend Jamestown Public School for the 2017-18 school year? Motion by Brenda, seconded by Bob. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving to Roman numeral 4, items for future agenda. I think we have some of those on there, I mean, as far as the board education's come up. Heidi?
Do we also, I did see the list, it was quite a few on there, but do we have the near site clinic on there as well? As we get closer, I think it would be good to just have a little more information on that as well.
Yeah, absolutely, we can add that. I'll continue to add some in my board report, but I would like to have Dr. Rashat come next time he's here, to come when that works out. I'm not sure when or how, but, or Randy Johnson from Hayes. Randy's been here before, to the full board, from the Hayes, that's the insurance consultant. And either one or both of them, I'd like to have them come, and I'm assuming it'd be closer to January 1st, but.
Okay. Moving to room number 5, meetings to be scheduled. We have our next school board meeting on Monday, September 18th, at 5:15 here in the Thompson Room. Also a reminder to right-click on monthly superintendent evaluation and and then right-click on adjournment. Jennifer?
Oh, I was just wondering if we had a health insurance committee meeting. I'm not.
Monday.
Is it Monday? Okay.
Monday at 3 there? Rob?
So, just for the record, Health Insurance Committee meeting on Monday at 3:30 in the Central Office Conference Room, and we will have a special board meeting before this one. We have to approve the agreement that is still out in review from the Education Association. So when they have a chance to review that and give us feedback on the language changes to the negotiated agreement, and if it becomes ratified, that would come back to the board. And so we do have a time frame working with fact finders that we have to work with, so we would likely need to have some kind of special meeting. It would be very quick, maybe try to do a noon meeting if that's possible to work within your schedules, but we will keep you up to date when we know that.
Okay. No further business. Meeting's adjourned. Technology?